Welcome. You're listening to Poli-Psych Podcast Analysis Brief. Today's topic, threats to the Second Amendment in Virginia, including Monday's upcoming rally in Richmond. Will it be the next Charlottesville?
One of the things the Poli-Psych team has been covering is some of the things in the Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia area. The recent happenings with Governor Northam in Virginia cracking down on the Second Amendment really seems like he's kind of trying to push some buttons, trying to get some people mad on purpose. And that's all within the context of the way that it's being managed, I think, by patriots appears to be very wise, at least at the grassroots and county government levels. There are many, I'd say most, I think it's more than 50%, even perhaps exceeding more than 2/3 of the Virginia counties are declaring themselves to be Second Amendment sanctuary counties, so that the local sheriff's departments and police departments will have grounds to refuse to confiscate weapons from Virginians in their counties. And that is the environment in which it would appear that the governor there is trying to kick off something that reminds us a bit of Charlottesville and the happenings there. I know that Ken has found an article that may be the lighting of the match if this thing begins to escalate any further, and it gives indications that it might. What is this article about, Ken?
Thanks, Don. It appears in the New York Post, and the headline is Virginia Governor Northam declares weapons ban ahead of Richmond gun rights rally. And I'm not sure who organized the gun rights rally, but I'd have to be a little suspicious about that. I think generally firearms, as we call them in New York, we don't regard them as fashion statements, and certainly I'm pro Second Amendment. But we have a little different opinion, and we're a little more sensitive when we see these major events occurring. And that's thanks for mentioning Charlottesville. That begins to draw attention as far as how does that going to play in the media, and what are the motivations behind creating that kind of an event, because it's really asking for trouble, I think. I don't know. What do you think, Cindy?
I believe I heard this week somebody say, and I'm not enough of a history buff to know this off the top of my head, that both the Revolutionary War and the Civil War began in Virginia. So I'm actually hearing that. I'm kind of wondering if people that do not intend good for the Republic of the United States are trying to use Virginia in a similar manner, maybe tap into some deep ancient well of rebellion there. Not that I don't think that the Revolutionary War was justified, because obviously I do. But they may, the people, the social engineers tap into some really strange ancient wells of human emotion and experience sometimes. And I think I can't help but wonder if that's why this thing is being forced in Virginia. And of course, Virginia, Governor Northam is known for not being a caring nurturer. He's the gentleman who, and I use the term loosely, who was on a radio broadcast talking about how babies who come to full term could be what he was calling, kind of an abortion, but justifying putting to death babies who had lived in the mother's womb 2 full term, been born, and then were unwanted or misformed. And he didn't get into a lot of specifics, but he was trying to justify putting a child's life to an end. So he's he's out there anyway. He's definitely, as I said, not known for being a caring nurturer.
Yeah, and he's also known for blackface. So those of us in the alternative media know these things about him, but I don't spend a lot of time monitoring myself the coverage of these kind of events in mainstream, except as I see people in the alternative media using clips and such. So, but this did definitely look like this most recent article has overtones of Charlotte. And I do agree with you, Cindy, that this is intended by the people that are used to controlling the narratives. They're intending to press buttons that have been there from previous narratives, meaning the history that we've come to believe is our national heritage or whatnot. So, if it's perceived as Northern aggression, then the Southerners are going to react. And this is deliberately pushing those buttons, I believe. So we'll see what happens. It's worth keeping an eye on.
It appears to be seizing upon some iconic archetypes of American history. Obviously, the Confederacy had the capital was Richmond, and that would tend to possibly tie into the anti-Trump racism narrative, similar to the setup at Charlottesville. And the organizers of the event is basically a gun rights, I think they're expecting 50,000 people, organized by the Virginia Citizens Defense League. And we're not yet familiar with who that is exactly. It doesn't appear to be the neo-Nazi group, although they may attach themselves to this for reasons we won't find out about right away, to try to dirty up that movement. But as Don says, as long as the sheriffs in the outlying counties are steadfast in their approach to their citizenry, the constitutional rights of those citizens will be protected. But I personally am very suspicious of these large events, and just as my own experience with tactical firearms is that they're not what you want in a crowded area. It's just not. It's not the right tool for self-defense. There's just no reason for it. It's my own personal, deeply held belief is that firearms are fine. They're guaranteed by the Constitution, but they're not fashion statements. And I think we risk losing our Second Amendment rights potentially if the movement is co-opted by the black hats who would take an event like this and spin the narrative afterwards to be in their interest, either to eliminate the Second Amendment completely or to somehow put this back on President Trump, as was the case with Charlottesville.
I think that one of the great dangers is that as we're familiar with the movement, the huge majority of people who view independent media and who might consider themselves, I'll say patriots. I'm not fond of the word because I think it's overused, but people who consider themselves patriots have good intentions. Again, I would say the huge majority do. Things like this, if Richard Spencer gets involved, and I heard that he might, if we have a repeat of Charlottesville, it paints the movement in a very, very dark colors that tends to threaten the unity of the majority of Americans who I do believe are unified in wanting to preserve the Bill of Rights, to preserve the United States Republic as we've experienced it. And I think that's the main danger of what's happening in Virginia, and we'll see what direction it takes next.
Yeah, I just want to react somewhat to what Ken said about the guns in densely populated areas and the danger of that. And we tend to think that, I think the natural response to that idea is that, oh no, you're trying to say that because it's different now, because there are more people in America than there used to be, our rights are going to get smaller. And yeah, maybe to some degree that's true. But the first thing that when Ken said that, the first thing that I thought of was how the sheriff in a very tiny Western town, typically, in the cowboy movies, would often have, especially if there was some kind of a controversy going on at the moment, would institute a ban on firearms at the local saloon. And this is that kind of thing, I think. I think within context, you have to recognize that there are areas that you don't want to say have open carry. And so I'm not a Second Amendment absolutist. I'm close to it. But I think we want to position ourselves with regard to all of our rights, the Second Amendment included, to be flexible enough to maintain them. And that's why I'm so glad that the counties are organizing, because that's the grassroots doing a pushback to the centralized control and media events that are going on. So again, I think it's important to view things in context, to see the big picture, and that way we don't let the media narrative that is really just looking at a tiny fraction of what's going on and trying to sell this as some huge problem. We don't want that to take over. We want the awareness of the grassroots, true, responsible American patriot gun owner to be the real, the bedrock, the environment in which all of this is happening, because that's what American gun ownership is about, responsibility.
Please leave comments and let us know what you think. Also, if you have enjoyed this discussion, please click like, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on BitChute, and follow us on Twitter. Once again, thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care.